Welcome to the Hush Hour podcast. In this series called Emergence, I'll be talking to people who've transformed their lives or the lives of others in unexpected and original ways, taking an apparent crisis and turning it into a powerful opportunity to create positive change. Paul Harfleet is a man who has made his life and himself into a work of creative art. Triggered by the trauma of being on the receiving end of homophobic abuse since boyhood, Paul decided to transform his responses to these dark moments by drawing on the gentle resilience of nature, while at the same time becoming, as he puts it, an accidental activist for the lgbtq community. His gentle references, stylized fashion interpretations of favourite birds using his extensive wardrobe and makeup skills, gained him a whole new tribe of fans and followers of all ages through Chris Packham's Self-Isolating Bird Club Facebook group, from which a new ornithologically inspired business grew. This is his story. Hello.
Hello.
Hello, Paul. How
How are you?
lovely to see you after all these mishaps. Hang on, let me just change the view. Let me see if I can get that's better. Yeah. How are you?
I've got to move the ironing board. I didn't know you could see it.
That's all right, don't worry.
These things matter, you know.
I know, that's why I use a fake background. Because
Don't
my
like that. Well, I'm almost here.
So, yeah, you've been in the middle of preparing for this exhibition all week then?
Well, I've been doing. It's kind of done now, but I was doing a lot of the work over the last couple of weeks and furiously getting stuff done because I was too busy before to do it. So now it's done. There's just sort of promotion and things to do. So it's kind of, that's pretty much okay. But I'm just like, what do I do now? What am I doing? I was just doing a photo shoot like that and running around.
You describe yourself as manic, perhaps?
Perhaps.
Sorry, yeah. I didn't mean to be rude, and we haven't even met yet properly. I'm not trying to be rude, even. Anyway, there's lots of things that have come up since I've been looking into your background and your history with all of your work and so on. And just for the sake of people who don't know you and they don't know me, the reason that we have come across each other is through the Self-Isolating Bird Club. And I thought maybe we could just talk about that for a minute before going into your personal history and creativity and so on.
Mm.
For me personally, it was like a kind of island of calm in the midst of all this chaos and confusion and manipulation and stuff. It was like just suddenly arriving at a nice peaceful lake, you know, where all you can hear is bird song and the sound of water rippling and things like that. And it served that purpose for me. So I really didn't want to hear anything about COVID on the SIBC group. I just wanted to know about woodpeckers and ducks and avocets and things like that. And I don't know about you, but this is not meant to be about me. I'm talking about myself. Anyway, just so you know, I've been a bird follower, watcher since childhood, always. I used to take myself off. In the days when nobody used to worry when a young adult took themselves off and went for a long walk in nature, before mobile phones even, I would take myself off into the woods, over the Sussex Downs, and I would go into stealth mode and just watch and listen, and then put the bird song and the birds together, and then go back and read. I don't think I'm going to be able to show you this book because I think the background thing is probably going to cut it out, but I'll have a go. Let's see. Do you see that one?
Yes, I've got that book.
Have you?
Yeah.
This was my bird Bible. It was given to me as a Christmas present as I think I must have been about 11 or something. And it's now falling apart.
It's actually over there, the book. But the
Oh,
that's my granddad's book. So my granddad was the one that kind of, my maternal grandfather got me into bird watching, and his wife, Jenny, it's
right.
his second wife.
Right.
They kind of bought me my sort of first proper grown-ups bird book, which I loved, and like bird sort of trinkets, like little porcelain models and things. I used to love those things.
Wonderful. Actually, it was my grandfather, I think, that first introduced me to
Yeah,
birds, and he was my father's father. And he used to live in a bothy. You've come across the bothies, haven't you? And there's sort of little, you could barely call them cottages because they're so small. And they're not
right.
exactly one room. They've got more than one room, but they're generally on farms. And he used to live in a bothy in Berkshire. And I loved going to stay with him. He was lovely. He was so gentle and so kind. And he used to take me on these long walks and point out birds' nests and all of this kind of thing. So, he gave me that first love of birds. And it's never stopped,
Yeah, it's amazing.
isn't
It's,
it?
I once, when I had an exhibition of, a few years ago now, I had an exhibition of drawings from my book, and it was in Geneva. And a woman came up to me, and we were talking about this very thing. And she said, "There's no greater gift you can give a child than the love of nature."
I totally agree with that. Because
Yeah.
otherwise you don't understand your connection to it.
Mm,
And I think a lot of, especially urban children, they have a great deal of problem actually understanding their place in nature because they
mm,
don't know that they can't live without it. And I've always felt that I have a mission to help to reconnect people to nature. And in fact, that's what these gongs are about behind me. There's one of them, the one on this side here, is an earth gong. And the whole point of that is that it's supposed to contain the original frequency, the orm that in some traditions they say created matter. So I use that in every session that I do. And I was thinking about ways and means of helping people to cope with this crisis. And that's part of it. But then I thought, I was listening to excerpts of your story, and I thought I would love to talk to you about it. And I thought, well, why don't I?
That's
Why
the
don't
wonders
I?
of modern
Because
technology.
and that's the thing. And well, if I'm interested, so many people would be interested, and so many people would benefit from how you've managed to create something beautiful out of something which was quite dark.
Mm.
So I didn't expect or intend to talk so much right at this early stage. So sorry. I'm usually fairly quiet, so I don't know what's happened there. Got a case of verbal diarrhea. Anyway, but what does the SIBC, or Self-Isolating Bird Club, mean to you? I mean, how's it affected you, do you think?
Well, it was really interesting because in the beginning of the lockdown, I had all my work planned for 2020, and I
Mm,
was sort of, okay, I know what I'm doing this year, and that's what's going to happen. And I was beginning to kind of make all of those plans come together, and then it sort of hit, and obviously everything was cancelled.
mhm,
So I remember talking to my sister Imogen, who's a singer, and I remember sat here, actually walking around the room, looking at the sky, going, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what I actually am going to do. And she said she didn't know either, but she was kind of doing some work. And I sort of was looking at the birds flying by, and I said, I don't know what it is that I'm going to do, but I have a feeling it might be something to do with birds. And
mm,
I kind of remember having that idea, thinking, okay, birds, because I've always, like you said, I've always loved birds. And I drew them for my book, Pansy Boy.
mm.
And I thought, well, maybe I should just start doing that, because I think I shared some drawings from the book because everyone was talking about birds. So
Yeah.
I started sharing some, and people really liked them. And then I said, well, maybe I'm going to draw you a bird. Who wants me to draw them a bird? And if you do, what bird would you like me to draw? So then I had lots of requests, and I started just doing that every day. And sort of going through all the requests going, okay, so everyone wants a robin and everyone wants a wren. So they were the early ones. So I just started doing that. And then people started asking for drawings to buy. So, and I was thinking, well, maybe this is something I can do to kind of recoup some of the money I've lost. So I set up a shop, like a shop of prints, and then started sort of doing that and directing people to that. And one of my friends said, oh, you should join the SIBC because that's all about birds. So I joined and posted pictures and everything, and it was kind of quite low key but nice, and it was kind of interesting to see that grow. But then when I started doing, so I did that for a couple of weeks, but then when I started the shop, I was thinking, well, if I'm going to take this seriously, then I probably need to advertise it in a kind of engaging way, because I could see that people liked the birds but weren't really going crazy for it. So I thought, well, maybe if I'm in it as this kind of drawn by me, because I know people respond to faces on social media more.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, well, I'll have a photo of me. And I kind of messed around. And then I just had this idea that maybe I could just dress slightly like the bird, and that would kind of aesthetically look nice. And it was that much of an idea. And the first one I did, I just wore a pink jacket and I had it next to my drawing of a flamingo, and that was it. And people, and it was kind of, I did a thing with my hand like that to sort of just echo the flamingo. So, and I referred to it then as gently referencing, because I didn't want to kind of go down the road of wearing a beak and feathers. I wanted it to be slightly cooler. So
yeah.
I basically did that. And as I kind of did more birds and did more gentle references, I got into this stride of doing it and kind of getting more and more, like, remember, I used to be a drag queen in the 90s. So, and I thought, well, maybe I could wear makeup and make a reference to birds with makeup too. And it was then that the SIBC kind of went a bit bonkers, because then I think the first one I did was a kingfisher, and I had like a blue jacket and an orange shirt and makeup. Yeah. And there was kind of a bit of a weird reaction to that on the SIBC. And so a couple of people were like, what are you doing? Why are you wearing makeup? Yeah, why are you wearing makeup? You're a man. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. Because obviously my work's always been about LGBTQ plus issues. So this is a kind of a new, even though Pansy Boy spoke about nature, I use that as a sort of almost like a Trojan's horse to talk about nature and being queer in nature and pansies and everything. So I've always thought of that as something separate, but nature, my love of nature, being a slight under the thing that hides the real issue, which is about bullying and homophobia. So when I enter into an ornithology world, I was like, oh, of course, maybe people are going to be a bit funny because they're not used to seeing.
It was not part of their everyday experience, I guess. So
So there was a woman who said you shouldn't really be wearing makeup. Makeup is for women. And I then responded very thoughtfully, saying, you're not correct. Face paint has been in human culture for millennia, and it's been worn by men and women. I was just sort of calm and distant, really. But then one of the admins, and I think Chris Packham also commented on this post because it was suddenly getting all of this attention. And I think it was that made me more noticeable in the algorithms of the group.
Right.
So I started just sharing, I continued to share them. And it sort of then became a bit of a thing that the group sort of really embraced. And
yes, I thought that everybody on the whole, I mean, I didn't see any of those negative comments, but I thought that
that was only once or twice. And since then, a few people would say, oh, I didn't really get this at the beginning, but now I really understand it. So it's sort of, I think it's been interesting because of what's been going on and because of the Black Lives Matter movement and Flock Together and movements of like allowing people outside of the heteronormative whiteness of where ornithology kind of majority of ornithologists are.
Exactly, yeah.
It's part of this discussion and conversation around making nature open to everyone and welcoming everyone from whatever background you have. So I was talking about that on lots of my posts, and so I think it was interesting for me because it was engaging with a community of people, because there was like, I don't know, 40,000 people or something. So you
Yeah.
had lots of conversations, and it was really nice, because people were then supporting it. And I was focusing really on the prints and directing people to the prints. And it was just really nice, really. And lots of people who, regular likers,
Yeah.
have become online friends in a way, where they'll kind of say, oh, I like this, and they'll always say something funny on one of the posts or something. So it's kind of, it's been really nice.
Wow. And we can't really talk about that without going more deeply into Pansy Boy, I think. Now, I was quite moved by that when I listened to you reading it. And I
Thank
think in
you.
some ways, although I haven't had to deal with being gay in my life, I was always a very sensitive, very shy child. And I got bullied at school because I didn't have the means to stand up for myself. I wasn't allowed to be angry as a child. It wasn't something that was permitted, so I didn't have any defense mechanisms. And so I can empathize, obviously not with everything, but I can really feel how you must have felt, and then more so because it must have been extremely difficult to go through that situation and still remain balanced, actually, because if you're being attacked for who you are, that must be extraordinarily difficult, just to maintain your equilibrium. And I wondered if you could talk about that a little bit.
Well, I think the impact, like, it's interesting because, so the book, well, I haven't really explained the Pansy Project. So the Pansy Project
Yes, I was going to come to that.
began, yeah, well, I'll start with the Pansy Project, because the Pansy Project and Birds Can Fly are both my work, but they sort of, Pansy Boys are almost like a bridge between them.
Right.
Because
Okay.
the Pansy Project started in 2005, and I planted pansies where I had experienced homophobic hate crime. And I'd been doing that for years and years, and a documentary was made about my work, and I made some t-shirts. And then I remember going for dinner with some friends and they were jokingly saying I should have a book out. And I was like, oh yeah, I probably should. And I jokingly said, it should be a children's book about homophobia. And I thought, wow, that's a really dark joke. And then that night I dreamt the book. So it basically plopped into my head, and I woke up. Yeah, I woke up going, oh, wow, okay. And I saw the boy, and I understood the kind of general arc of the story, even though it's not like, this is not a massively complex story, but it was just, I had this story. So I basically, say again?
You had a download.
Yeah. So I just, I started writing immediately and drawing immediately. And basically the book is about a boy who loves birds and nature and dreads going back to school because he knows he's going to be bullied. And then he goes back to school, and he is. And he then goes and investigates the language of flowers and birds, and discovers the idea of this pansy and plants them around the school. And then everything's okay. And it was a really interesting process. But I suppose the writing of it made me think differently about my experiences, because I was bullied, but in my mind, it's quite complex when you're a child dealing with homophobia, and it's everywhere, obviously, and it's misogyny is everywhere and racism is everywhere. But for me, I had always had this sense of injustice, thinking, well, it's not okay, that doesn't make sense, and I don't really understand why there would be that sort of reaction to me. And I was very feminine, and people used to shout at me all the time, but it was something that I was like, I knew immediately that they were in the wrong. I didn't sort of question myself in that way. I just knew that they were incorrect about the world. And but I realized when I was writing the book how traumatized I had been, because it was I'd written the book basically and had some illustrations, and I'd sent it out to publishers, and no one was interested at all. But then I suddenly got, well, a friend of mine has a friend who writes for The Guardian and was interested in looking at homophobia in schools. And then we basically they did a piece on me, and it was about my search for a publisher. And a couple of publishers saw the article and got in touch with me. And Martin Goodman from Barkin Press was the person I went with. And he was really key in developing and identifying some of the plot and making sure that the boy was in peril, because I sort of slightly skirted around the issue, and he made me realize that I needed it to be darker, to give him impetus to come up with the idea, excuse me. And then, so it was that process was really hard to kind of delve into the shame of being bullied in that way, because all of the bullying happened, and the scene that I developed after that discussion with Martin was the scene in the changing room where the boys attacked him in the changing room, and that happened to me, and it was really, I'd never spoken about it, and it was really traumatic. So, but yeah, it was kind of just a really interesting thing for me to do, and it's been amazing then to take that to schools and to talk about it, and to talk about the kind of experience of bullying. And it's a really nice way of introducing people to the Pansy Project and reminding those children that may or may not be going through that themselves, that the people who are the bullies are in the wrong. Just so you know, I plant pansies at the site of homophobic abuse on the street. I've already planted 2 this morning. The light is really nice, and we're going to go and plant one at the demo that the Westboro Baptist Church people did, which is we're going to do that. Hopefully they'll tweet me again. So, let's go. Okay, out this way. I was furious about it, but I think as I grew up, I realized, and that's kind of where the Pansy Project, because obviously it's a slightly weird time warp where I'm imagining that the boy came up with the idea, but me as a boy came up with the idea. But then as an adult, and homophobia was continuing, and I could see it more violently, I think it's that then starts chipping away at that confidence and chipping away at that kind of idea that that you are okay in the world, because you begin to realize that a lot of people in the world really do not want you to exist. For my 7-year-old self. With eyes of green and curls of brown, he was a boy from an average town. He loved to draw and he loved to write. He marvelled at all things in flight. He fashioned planes with folded paper. He became an accomplished paper shaper. As birds flew by, he learned to love kestrel, lapwing, and collared dove. Holidays passed in reverie, but school was filled with jeopardy. Slightly crestfallen and reluctantly glum, the day arrived that he knew would come. He packed up his satchel and pencil case, put on his blazer and bravest face. His stance and demeanour may have been fey, his nature girlish and potentially gay. It's not as though he had a say, it was always clear he was born this way. Fairy, pansy, or just queer were the words he came to fear. You realise that it's not just kids who are stupid who are doing it, it's kind of institutions and organisations and governments are being homophobic, and you suddenly realise that actually you have a battle to fight if you're going to survive. And I think that was the thing that was the impetus for the Pansy Project initially, because I was realising that actually violence and homophobia were part of my everyday when I was younger, something that just happened. So, and I think that's common for lots of people of my sort of generation. So it's just that, and every generation, let's be honest. So I think it's that drove me to do something about it, I guess.
Well, I have to say I found some of the films that I was watching for the Pansy Project extremely moving. And in fact, I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to get myself together to speak like in a normal way, because they're heart-wrenching, absolutely heart-wrenching. And the fragility of these beautiful flowers in that context is just, it's mind-boggling, actually, when you start to feel that the dissonance, you know, between the titles and the beauty of the natural thing. And the fact that they kind of look like little faces as well, you know, they're very sort of personable. I've always loved pansies because they look like little people.
Mm.
And in fact, it was really funny finding one in the street just by chance yesterday.
That's so weird.
Isn't it
Yeah,
weird? And it
yeah.
was tiny. It was really, really, really small, about that size. You know, it wasn't one of these big showy ones. It was just a little tiny little pansy doing its own thing. You know, so
Yeah, it's kind of been a bonkers, because that idea fell into my head as well. It's sort of just, I was thinking about, because it was the impetus for it was I experienced 3 separate incidences of homophobia in one day. So that was the point for me where I was like, this is ridiculous. Why is this happening? And my work, I had just finished my MA. So, and my work had gone away from painting and more to some conceptual work. And I was interested in the urban environment and making work that was a bit more immediate, but I hadn't really formulated anything much. And then, well, actually, one of the things I always talk about when I do the work, when I do a talk, is that I tell this story about this dream again. And I once had a nightmare, one of those really vivid dreams, that I found a dead magpie outside my flat. And in my dreams, it was really violent and horrible and disturbing. And that morning, I went to art school, and outside my flat was a dead magpie.
Oh my gosh!
And I was like, wow, that is weird.
Oh.
So I picked the magpie up and I took it to art school, and I thought, okay, well, I'm going to have to make some work about this. And so I was actually just about to have an exhibition in my flat. I was just launching an artist-led space called Apartment in my flat in Manchester. And I ended up putting the magpie back where I found it, taking a video of it for 1 minute, which I called One for Sorrow, and did a drawing of the magpie dead and put it almost like a doormat by the front door. And then when people visited the flat, they could see the magpie, and they could see the drawing, and they would definitely see the video that I placed in my bedroom where I'd had the dream.
Wow.
So it's kind of like this idea of deja vu. And what was amazing for me was that I could see people going, oh, I think I just saw a magpie outside, not realizing that it was part of the work. Yeah. So I wanted to sort of have this idea of deja vu and memory and messing around with memory. So that was really a powerful piece of work for me, which then led, I think, to what the Pansy Project would be, because I was playing with symbols and memory and the idea of the sort of what that a flower means when it's on the street unexpectedly, especially in terms of roadside memorials I was looking at. So it was that really that sort of drove me to it. But I suppose, I just remember where I was stood when I had the idea and thinking, and I remember it feeling like it was landing into my mind, that the idea was there.
I do know that feeling. I do know that feeling. And I was going to ask you, do you actually feel like you were born for this kind of active, sorry, that's a bit dramatic, isn't it? I don't mean to make you choke on your water. I mean, in a sense, in a cliche, divinely guided, put it like that. Because from what you're saying, it's almost as if you are really connected to your, I don't know, your soul, your higher self, your spirit, whatever that's feeding you.
Well, I don't necessarily, I kind of think that my subconscious mind, or one's subconscious mind, does a lot of the work. So I'm quite used to, over the years, I've had some creative problems that I would then take to bed and go, okay, this is your problem. You're going to fix it in your dreams. And I've done that a few times and it's kind of worked. I don't necessarily feel like don't really have that belief system. Okay. I just feel like it's I just feel like my subconscious is processing it and then will spit out the kind of the answer, which it generally does, and it's generally the right answer. But I don't think of it in those terms, but it's not like I'm completely closed-minded, but I think I'm just a bit more practical, I suppose. But it's funny because I kind of, when you're creative and with birds, hopping back to Birds Can Fly, I do feel like that's like a perfect incarnation of myself.
Yeah.
It's almost like I've always loved birds, and I've always loved sort of dressing up in fashion and clothes. When I was a child, I felt like I was going to be a fashion designer, but I was too embarrassed to say it. So I used to pretend I wanted to be a motorcycle and I don't even know what you call it, like a racing car driver.
Oh,
It's not
okay.
really like, I don't know. And I
That
can't
doesn't
drive.
quite fit somehow.
Yeah, I've never been able to drive. I've never
Really?
driven.
Oh,
And so the funny thing is that I'm slightly now doing a bit more fashion stuff and makeup and things like that. I've always loved it. So all of these things coming together feels like it's a very authentically me project, as does the Pansy Project. But this is kind of almost is weirdly based on my childhood in a way that's more
yeah, yeah.
direct.
This is, I mean, the purpose of this chat really was to help people to think about ways of transforming a crisis into an opportunity. So that, and in a sense, you've been doing that your whole life, from what I understand.
Yeah, and I don't really know where that comes from, I suppose. It's just one of those a creative mind, I suppose, that does that. I don't know. I think I've always been resistant to work that is, I don't know, maybe too aggressive. I like the gentleness of literally the gentle referencing is gentle, and the
Mm,
Pansy Project is gentle. And
yeah,
I do feel that you get more from with honey than you do with a stick. So
yeah,
it's
I
almost like
agree with
I
that.
think if the Pansy Project is so calm and you can't really be angry at it,
You can't
even
be, no, but you can be upset by the stories behind it. I mean,
well, that's the intention. So
yeah,
it's the idea of the
yeah,
image being just a pretty flower is nice enough. But then when you hear the stories, especially on the website where there's now more than 300 plantings, if you
mm-mm.
go through the website and you read all of the stories, it is kind of
I've been through quite a
heartbreaking.
few,
Yeah,
and some of them are just harrowing, totally
yeah,
harrowing.
yeah. And I think that's the reality of some people's experiences. And
It's quite bizarre because that's something else I've always puzzled about. It's about this intolerant side of humanity. It's like people are stuck in some sort of childhood or childish way of looking at the world, in which anyone who doesn't fit is a target for whatever kind of abuse.
mm,
And I just wonder what the cure is, because it just seems to me that it's gone on for so long, and I wonder if there is a way of. I mean, I guess you're kind of working on that through the Pansy Project, the schools workshops and stuff.
yeah, I think it has to be education. I
Mm,
think that well, when I was at school, Clause 28 was in action. So it was that banned teachers from talking about queer issues. So there was lots of ignorance. And I believe that education is the only thing that
mm,
it's, well, I suppose there's always going to be people that are resistant. You know, religious institutions are notoriously homophobic.
yeah.
And
Well, I was going to say that I actually hold religion responsible for this kind of intolerance, really.
well, I suppose it's culture and
Mm,
men and patriarchal society and and I feel like perhaps now that is being dismantled in a slightly different way than it has before.
mm. I
But
I do hope so.
yeah, me too. And I think it's just I've never understood it. I've never wanted to accept it, but I feel like the conversations, there's a sort of slight leaning towards this, lots of issues that are very binary and people are kind of quite angry about the various things. And
Yeah,
really it's social media perhaps is a problem for that, or is it's a sort of catalyst in a way that
yeah, yeah.
perpetuates some of those kind of arguments.
Mm,
With my work, I always want to talk about things. I don't have the answers. I just think, why does this happen? What is it about? What is the problem?
mm.
And it's it's about having those conversations. And I don't go into a classroom with any answers. I want to hear people's stories, and it's generally and genuinely really interesting to sort of be a catalyst for those stories. And I suppose I've missed that actually in the last
Yeah, I
year.
can imagine. Yeah, I can
I've
imagine.
done some workshops, but you can't really get you can't get that interaction. But
No.
and I think that my work really is about me trying to use art and creativity as a sort of, as I said earlier, it's a Trojan horse to open up conversation. It's not about having an answer as such.
Do you tackle specific age groups at school, or do you just go where you're invited?
I've done it with all age groups. I've done it with adults too. So I have a sort of a set workshop that I do every time, which is, it begins with me reading the book, and then we do some drawing exercises, and then we draw to the sound of birdsong, and which is intended to kind
I
of just,
love that, the mark making. Yeah,
yeah, it's
that's great.
really fun. And
Yeah.
it's what's really I feel like is really empowering is that I remember if I was a child, no, I was a child. When I was a child, if an actual artist, because obviously I've always loved art and drawing, if an actual artist came to the class and spoke to me, I would have just wet myself with excitement. So I'm sort of imagining that I'm talking to that child who would be really excited. But and the thing that art education does in a way, and I remember this at school, is I was very advanced as a child drawing. I was kind of doing three-dimensional shapes as a toddler, basically. I was just drawing in a really weird way. And when I was at school, I was always I sound like such a show-off now, but when I was in school, I was always ahead of what people were doing. So people were drawing shoes, and I was like, I don't want to just draw a shoe, I'll draw a person, I'll do whatever I want to do because I already know how to draw a shoe. So the idea of the workshop is that children make a mark, and anyone can do that, and it's always accurate because they've made a mark based on the sound that they've made, and they hold it up, and I always say, you have just made a perfect conceptual drawing of a bird song, because everyone does it because it's their interpretation of that bird song,
and they're feeling it through their bodies at that time.
Yes. And they always are really like, oh, I've done something really good. And even though they are always beautiful. And there's it's like, that's one of the things that I really love, is that you can then just give people that, like, that is brilliant. You've done it and it's brilliant. You didn't even have to, like, you're disconnected from what you thought you should be drawing when you're drawing a bird. So it's about dismantling what you expect to draw, to encourage people to actually play around with drawing in a way that they wouldn't necessarily have expected to do.
I do think that's so important, because so many people just say, I can't draw.
I know.
And then that's it, then they never try. And
yeah, and it's such a calming thing to do.
Yeah.
And I think I don't, well, unless you've got very severe disabilities, and even if you have, everyone can draw. And you can, I don't know, but it's that sort of, I think people are trapped in the idea that you have to do a drawing that looks like a photograph or something. And
I hate that. I don't even like it in real life. And actually, I'm an ex-art student as well, in fact. I went to St. Martin's in the 80s. At the time of Sade and Boy George was hanging around as well. So that puts me in context. Yeah. So, and I've lost my thread. What did you just say before that?
Drawing.
Yeah. No, I've forgotten what I was going to say.
You were saying you didn't like photorealist photographs.
Oh yes, that was it. No, I can't bear photorealism, because what's the point? It's okay, it's a skill, it's a fantastic skill. I can't take that away from anybody. But why? Apart from to challenge yourself technically, the way I draw, I'm very energetic. I'm not photographic in any way, shape, or form. It's all about the mark making and the pressure and the texture. And in fact, I used to draw a lot of birds, and I was looking around, I couldn't find any to show you because they're in some dusty portfolio somewhere in the back of a cupboard. But photorealism just doesn't do it for me. It really, really doesn't. Though I can totally appreciate the skill that it takes to do it, because I don't have that eye. And maybe that's why I don't like it, because I can't do it. I don't know.
Yeah, I suppose I have a kind of appreciation of it, but the drawings I've made, what's interesting is that because I've been drawing every day, more or less, my style has just become a particular kind of style, and it's not photorealist, but it's kind of very illustrative. Can't say that. And so I like that style, obviously. So you like the thing you like, but I suppose I'm always in awe of people that can do that and do things that in a different way. But actually, you just have to be authentically what you do, don't you?
That's
Otherwise,
it. Yeah, and I came across a book years ago which I always refer to or people to when they want to draw and they say that I can't, and that's a book called Drawing on the Right Side of Your Brain. Have you heard of that?
I have heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's in a sense that what it does is it trains you to look at the spaces between things,
Yeah.
so that you're no longer assuming that something is a particular shape because you're drawing the like when you come to draw a cup, and people will always have pointy bits here because they can't quite get the oval to work or something.
Well,
You know what I mean? It's just a
that's a
weird.
really funny story because my dad tells this story that when I was like 3 or 4, knowing that I was drawing, he said, "Let's draw this cup," and he drew the cup like a rectangle and a thing, and I drew the ellipse.
You see, yeah,
And he was like, "Oh my God, he really can draw." But I always do that thing. I always draw upside down because I often copy from various photographs and video and illustrations, and I kind of
yeah,
in my mind sort of take sort of collagey bits from each and
yeah.
mold them in my head. But if I have some kind of idea, I turn the image upside down and draw upside down, and that always works better. And
It's a good way of not assuming something about something, isn't it? I think
exactly, yeah,
actually that's
yeah,
one of the techniques in that book. In fact, is to draw
yeah.
something
I must have read
down.
it as a child then.
Yeah, it's really good. It's a great book. I still have it. I
Yeah.
lend it occasionally to people, but it's got lots of really good exercises in there for kids and things like that. Things like if you want to draw a chair, and chairs are really hard to draw, especially if they've got struts and curved legs and things like that. It's very, very difficult to get past the fact that you can't quite believe that the leg curves like that in relation to the other leg, and I don't know, it's a real challenge for people, I think.
Yeah, I don't have that challenge anymore.
No, I do not.
I don't know. I kind of, I think if you draw every day, it's almost like second nature.
Yeah,
It's an amazing thing. I love that about being able to draw.
yeah,
Because
yeah, yeah.
like you say, everyone can, but being able to kind of bring out what you have in your mind onto the page,
Mm.
it's a
It's
total
it's a
thing.
wonderful gift, and it's actually something that I've neglected for years because I had to choose. And I chose music for 30 years, and I've been performing and whatever, and teaching drumming and stuff like that. But it's still nagging away in the back of my mind that it's something that I really need, while I still can, I really, really need to do. And
Yeah, I think it just I think because the thing with the pandemic, well, with the drawing that I was doing during the pandemic, I kind of needed to do it because
mm,
there was genuine fear at the
yeah,
very beginning,
yeah,
and I was like, this is really terrifying,
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think
and
we're all
so
in the same state.
drawing just enabled me to switch off from those thoughts and just focus on what it was that I was doing. And I would spend they take quite a while, those drawings, they're really
I can
detailed. So
imagine. Of course, you do them all in black and white, don't you? And then add the color later.
yeah, I don't yeah, they're all pencil then pen, and then I scan them in and do it digitally. So I've got the
Mm.
original black and white drawings because I kind of almost prefer those. But but then I have the digital file that I can do anything with, which is really fun.
So in a way, I mean, that's the other thing I was going to talk to you about was this how COVID, in a way, has been an amazing opportunity for everybody if you look at it in a certain way. I mean, if you look at it the other way, if you flip it, at no other time on earth, probably, has there been a moment when the entire population of the world has had this, it's like a crossroads. Do we go this way? Do we go this way? How do we not go down the path of doom, gloom, disaster? How can we reinvent humanity and ourselves as individuals? Because I think it does start with the individual first. You have to heal yourself first in order for other people to be able to heal. Because I also believe in this thing called morphic resonance. I don't know if you've heard about that, but
Mm.
how the fact that send something out into the field that other people then receive, whether they're conscious of it or not. So I think that this is a moment of great opportunity, and that this kind of work is a catalyst in more ways than maybe you even realize yourself, because you are influencing people in so many ways, but perhaps it's much greater than that even. You maybe, because of, like, for example, the children that you're doing workshops with, they will influence their families. Even if it's only a small degree, it might, it permeates through. And like water carved out the Grand Canyon, eventually things have to change. That's what I think. That's what keeps me going, really.
Well, you have to hope things change, otherwise it is a bit depressing, isn't it?
Totally, and I've been there. I've we've all got dark places. I've been in more dark places than I care to think about over this last year and so, because I lost all my work as well, and I wasn't able to go, and I can't really do things at home because I live in a flat. I've got neighbours, I can't make noise. They make noise. I can't be, I was trying to do guided meditations. I can't do them at home because the neighbours might start playing music or hammering or, whatever. So I started, my equivalent of what you were doing, I think, was to start a group called the Uplift Group, which was where I would post things that inspired me in order to try and help people to stay afloat, really. And I would do things like rune readings, the Viking runes, or card readings, and things that I felt that I would write, because I do write as well. Although I don't call myself an author or anything like that, but I express what I feel, and I seem to be able to express it in a way that other people understand. So that's kind of my equivalent, and that's also what this falls into. So that was the germ. That the first lockdown, sorry, was the germ of this whole trajectory. And, so I'm really hoping that this will not explode. That's too violent a term.
Grow.
Evolve. Yeah, I'm hoping it will evolve into a really useful resource for people. That they will listen, and hopefully listen more than once to these conversations, so that they can think about things differently, and not be so downtrodden by the weight of their own emotions and things. Because I'm a very emotional person. I know what that feels like, and it can be very oppressive when you are in the depths of a major depression. You don't know how you're ever going to get out of it. But yet there's always that moment of choice, isn't there?
Well, because I think from everyone I've spoken to, everyone's had ups and downs, and I had the downs too. And I was like, what the hell am I doing? And I would just be sat here blankly looking at the wall going, what's the point? But the drawing, the fact that there was that group, and there was kind of people going, I want to see, where's your next gentle reference? That would be the thing that would keep me going. And it was, as it grew, I'd be like, well, I should do it. I may as well do it. And it's bonkers now when I look back at what I've done since March 2020, because it's basically like a company now.
Isn't it, though? I mean, it's very impressive. You seem to be very enterprising as well.
Well, yeah, I don't really know how that happened, but I just sort of, people like the drawing so much, I thought maybe I could do t-shirts. And then the t-shirts are really fun to do, and they're all illustrations, and they look really nice. So I've just been doing that, and that adds to the whole thing. It kind of made sense for me to kind of do that too, maybe for profit, but also because they've got things like Enthusiastic Ornithologist and Future Ornithologist on. I kind of wanted to enable people to wear something that would say to the community that I'm an ornithologist. And I've heard stories now where people have been out bird watching, seeing someone else wearing the top that they've got, so they're both wearing them. I'm like, oh my god! So it's amazing when you see people share pictures of with me, and then I share them, of them wearing their Birds Can Fly is the brand name right now.
Yeah.
T-shirts or sweatshirts or hoodies, and bird watching. It's just so fun. I just love it. But I guess that's sort of me being, it's necessity, because I needed to make some money. I needed to see.
Of course, yeah. I mean, you have to support yourself. You can't just sit on your bottom and do nothing.
Yeah, and I suppose it's not usual for me. I've never made money from my work in this way. Well, I have, I suppose, I've toured and I've had stuff with the Pansy Project, but I've always had to work as well. And
Okay.
so it's bits of money here and there, but as an artist, you don't make that much money. I don't sell
Yeah,
work.
yeah.
But with this body of work, I am able to sell it. It's a bit more accessible. You can buy a print and it's not expensive. I've made them cheap on purpose. And then people can buy them and people can buy the t-shirts and they can become, I think within that group, it became part of a sort of almost like a town, like a village high street. There was
Yeah.
various people doing various things that were sort
Like
of
one small
birthday.
town. Have you heard, what's his name again? Oh goodness. Can't think of the man's name. He came up with this concept called one, I think it's one small, yeah, it is one small town, whereby people support each other in that way. And
Mm,
different people give in a different way, and then you receive something back from it, and it becomes a self-sustaining way of living. So it's a whole lifestyle in that sense. But
mm.
I know what you mean. It's almost like it's got its own what's that word? The words are escaping me.
Ecosystem.
Ecosystem. Thank you. Yeah.
Mm.
It's become
Yeah,
an ecosystem, which is great.
yeah,
Given
yeah,
that we're
it
talking
is.
about nature and so on.
Yeah, and it's been so nice. And I think my mission really is now to expand it and see whether I can make it further reaching. And
Mm.
I suppose it's just, it's like another thing I've done, like it's now become another arm of my work. And
Mhm.
it's just an interesting thing for me because it's about, I suppose as an artist, you're taught to be a conceptual artist is someone who is authentically themselves and they do the work and they exhibit in galleries and things. And my work's always kind of slightly been outside of that because I'm planting pansies on the street. It's closer
Yeah,
to street art really than
yeah,
to
yeah.
art in the conventional way, even though I do make photographs and have been in exhibitions. But with this, the birds can fly being almost like an entrepreneurial small business type situation.
Mm.
It's something that I'm thinking, well, if people really love the drawings as much as
They
they
love
say
it.
they are,
Yeah,
why
yeah.
wouldn't they want
Why
one
not?
on their t-shirt?
Yeah.
Now I have a page of the Birds Can Fly Facebook page, which has got 2,000 like members and things like that. So it's sort of a
It's got
different,
legs, basically. Or
or
perhaps
wings.
wings. Yes, I was just going to say that.
I hope so because I'm obsessed with it, and I wonder what will happen now the world is kind of emerging
Mm,
into real life. One hopes that it can continue and grow and do different things, but
yeah, I
yeah,
hope so. I hope it, in a way, I hope that it will emerge differently, in a good way. I hope that people will not expect just to go back to the way things were, because I don't think the way things were was working, really. It's just what we were used to.
yeah, I
I'm
think
not an advocate for what's been going on currently, as you probably realise, but I just think that this opportunity to change positively has to be grabbed with both hands, really.
I really think that the nature side of it's going to have it will. I feel like the groundswell is moving in that direction. I don't think the government are going to get away with doing some of the things they're doing,
No,
and
I don't think so either.
I think it is going to change. I really hope so. And the idea of community with the nurses and everything, I think that will
Mm,
sort of remain. And I hope it will anyway. Like my grandparents' generation in the war, you could see in their behavior and you could see the way that they operated in the world was
mm.
influenced by that time. And I
Yeah.
think the same thing will happen to us.
Mm.
We'll operate differently, I think.
I think so. I think so. And I think a lot of this work is about healing the trauma, because I think so many people have been totally traumatized by this experience, by the fear that's been pushed down our throats relentlessly since the beginning of 2020. It's done a lot of damage psychologically to a lot of people, especially kids. So
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of, I think it's, I am someone who's relatively buoyant and I've been going down those dark places and I think everyone has. So
yeah,
it's really tough. And I don't think we will really realize
mm.
how much it's been an impact until it's ended.
I haven't been on the tube train for a year,
Yeah. Well,
literally.
I went to Col because I have an exhibition that opens in
Mm,
Colchester. I went 2 weeks ago to plant pansies in Colchester,
right.
and that was the first time I'd left London since last summer, pretty much.
Mm.
And I was like feeling in the morning going, okay, you can do this. A year ago, I was flying by myself to New York without batting an eyelid.
Yeah.
Now I'm a bit nervous about going to Colchester on my own.
I
I was like, what is going
know.
on? You have to just snap out of it.
I
Otherwise, you're
know.
going to become agoraphobic and never be
I
able
know.
to get
So,
out of
I
it.
mean, I think I almost reached that point last year that I think there was a time I didn't go out for about 3 or 4 days in a row. I thought, no, this can't happen. This can't
I've
happen.
been like that.
Have you?
I'm a total workaholic though, because I've been
I got that impression, I have to say.
well, I've been getting up super early. In the beginning of the lockdown, I was literally getting up at 6, half 5, 6, drawing until 12, that one drawing. So for that 6 hours, then it would take me 3 hours to do the coloring on Photoshop. And then I would be doing the gentle reference, which would take longer. And then I'd do my makeup and do the photo shoot and do the beauty editing and then post it all and do all of that stuff. And then by 12 o'clock, I would have done one bird and
Wow.
the gentle reference, 12 p.m. And I
That's,
was like,
you must have been pie-eyed. God.
but I would just get up and do it again because the
Oh.
people were like, oh, we really want another one. Even though clearly I could have just said no. Well, I'm
Mm-mm.
gonna have a break. But there was a time when I was doing one a day for a few days in a row, and I didn't do anything other than that.
Mm.
Literally, I barely ate because I was just doing it all the time. But I'm much less like that now. I'm sort of trying to balance it out, but I still do work all the time. It's kind of bonkers, really. I shouldn't. But I am going to have a holiday.
I think that's the thing about working for yourself as well, though, isn't it? Because it's very hard to monitor your own use of time and how you divvy up the day. I'm not sure if I could master getting up at 5:30 and working until midnight because I've never been like that anyway.
I've always done that. When I was working full time, I was doing the Pansy Project as well. So I would work until 5, come home at 6, work until 8 or 9 on the Pansy Project stuff. So
Mm.
it's just been, because as an artist, there's not really much choice. You don't
Yeah.
really get paid well enough
No.
to have the time. And because I'm just on my own doing it, it's like if I don't do it, no one's going to do it. It's not like people are going to buy t-shirts if
It's
they
not going
don't
to
know
happen.
about it. So I'm sort of obsessed and about learning how social media works more and
Yeah, me
teaching
too.
myself how animations work and doing all of that stuff.
I was going to ask you as well about your videography because you're quite slick in your production.
Well, I taught myself that too. So I
Yeah.
was sort of I took the photograph. I've been taking the photographs since 2005,
Mhm.
and as social media emerged, I used it, and I got a better sort of a digital camera that had a film function, which
Mm.
wasn't brilliant, but I started just to be very interested in the way that the pansies move
Yeah.
and are planted as a
Yeah.
thing, as an object, really, as a piece of
Mm.
work. So I basically just taught myself how to edit and do the voiceover stuff. And I basically got really obsessed. I guess I'm just someone that gets really obsessed with things. I think a couple of the times on the films that you may have seen, the one I made in America and the one I made that was just basically a showcase.
Mm.
I,
Yes, I've seen both. I've seen the Berlin one, the American one, and the showcase.
yeah. So I think it was no one, I suppose basically what it comes down to is that no one else was making films like that
Mm.
about my work. And if I wanted a film about my work, I was going to have to make it myself. So that's what I taught myself how to do it. It's
Well,
all
they're
thanks
great.
to,
They're really well done. I just enjoyed watching them, the atmosphere, the timing, everything about it, the transport, sort of the moving images that you've got going along,
yeah.
the slow-mos and the normal speed. I think it was a really good mix, and I was quite impressed. So I was going to ask
Thanks.
maybe I
Well,
could
it's
pay
kind of
you
a
to teach
miracle.
me photography.
Well, it is a miracle that I was able to do that. I kind of can't really believe I did that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing what one's mind can do.
The other thing that I feel as well is that the pyramid is the wrong way up, so that the creativity is undervalued, and actually it should be such a special thing. Rather than artists having to scrape a living by, I don't know, working in a cafe or a pub or a bookshop or something like that. It should be the other way around.
Yeah, I think that.
In the past, it perhaps was more balanced like that. I don't know if that's true, but kind of feel that this modern life has been tipped on its head in a way.
Yes, I think that it's lots of my friends who are artists and creatives struggle with that reality. You know, musicians who have got record deals and are still struggling.
I know. I mean, what's that about? And it's crazy, isn't it?
I just think it's wrong. I think the fact that so everything that we look at, everything on the screens that we've been spending our years looking at over this last couple of years now, it's getting to, is creatively made. It's not just.
I know.
And it's always really annoyed me that people can go, wow, you can draw, that's an amazing gift. Will you just draw me a drawing for no money at all? It's like, you don't,
there's no value. They don't value it. They love it.
It's not valued. I think it's just that capitalism doesn't really value it unless you're Damien Hirst or Tracy Emin, where there's a very extreme amount of money made from work, which isn't dissimilar to lots of work I know about that isn't esteemed in the same way.
No.
I think it's a luck of a draw. It's almost like a lottery who you're going to get, who is going to be like the top echelon of millionaires who are making work. And then there's the rest of the 98% of artists who are struggling from day to day, trying to pay the rent and ducking and diving, working in restaurants, doing whatever. I've done that my entire life, worked in restaurants, worked in offices. I've never had, this actual last couple of years is the only time I've ever really had time to focus on my own work. I've not done any other work. Although I suppose I've done some graphic design stuff and to help, but it's the first time really I've ever been fully creative.
Yeah.
But still, it's not easy. It's not.
No.
So I think it's just a shame. I don't know how that will change.
I don't know. I hope that it will.
Nurses, like, as in the world where nurses are paid less than footballers, the world just does not make sense.
No.
And clearly, nurses and the people that do the everyday kind of chores are not paid well enough. And
not at all.
It just that the world is insane.
Yeah. So are you from the north? Actually, I didn't ask you that, did I? Where are you from originally?
I was born in Kingston upon Thames.
Oh, were you? Oh, okay, I thought you were from the north.
Well, I moved to Edinburgh when my mum remarried when I was about 14, so I lived in Edinburgh, and then they moved from Edinburgh to Manchester, and I lived there for a few years, and I've been back in London for about 10 years now. So I've been all over.
And were your family supportive of you when you were younger? I didn't ask you that earlier.
Yes. Look, yes. I think it's hard. My mum isn't alive anymore. My mum was she was the artistic one. So she was very supportive of that. And I think what happened with me is that it was so blatantly obvious that I was gay as a child that no one was surprised that it happened. It was almost like I emerged from the closet. I didn't come out of it. And it was one of those things. I don't really have a coming out story because it was just, that Paul. And, but I suppose I was I suppose there was a lot of other stuff going on with my family. So it wasn't really the main focus of what my mind was on. It was other weird stuff. So, my dad is supportive and slightly perplexed. He's much more of a businessman. So he's actually been quite helpful with the Birds Can Fly thing, because I've been asking him actual business kind of questions. He gets that a bit more, but I think he's just a very pragmatic sort of person. So thinks that is sort of a bit perplexed why I would spend my life planting pansies at the site of homophobia, because where's the money? But I don't really do it for the money, because it would be a really stupid thing to do.
Thank you, Paul.
You're welcome.
It's been really nice talking to you. And
And to
it's
you.
good to hear your stories. And I do wish you such good luck with all of this, because it's so it's an immense thing to take on. I think, it's a sort of something that can have the possibility to change people's view of the world, and I think it's really valuable in that context. So
Yeah, I hope
I
so.
wish you great success with everything.
Thank you so much, and to you.
Thank you.
In the gardens of Kew, we read for hours and learned the language of the flowers. The science of plants cultivated by man, horticulture became the root of his plan. The pansy, a word used by friend and foe, was clearly the botanical way to go. At every place where he'd been hurt, he planted pansies in the dirt. The children's wails became quite choral. Who has turned our schoolyard floral? He explained the motive for this caper by writing in a dart of paper. The plane took flight and came to land within the reach of a teacher's hand. The school now knew the flower's meaning and wasted no time intervening. They kept offenders after school until they learned the golden rule, that everybody has the right to live without the need to fight.